I really don't need to explain why villains matter. We all know how good they can be. They are fascinating because they are the only pillars on a story that could evoke every single emotion at the same time and be narratively interesting. You can understand Sephiroth, you feel for his struggles, he is scary, he is hot, and you absolutely hate him for what he has done. So many emotions within a simple 32-bit game that looked like this. But something in the industry has changed. If you look at any greatest video game villains of all time list, they're all still trapped in 2015. Sephiroth, Vaas, Kafka, Arthas, Zeus, Handsome Jack, GLaDOS. All that because the modern industry can't seem to create villains with real presence anymore. Not screen time or a multi-million-dollar casting, but the gravitational pull that only a villain exerts on a game, as well as their complete domination over you as the player and the world they habit. And that is something that comes from dialogue, personality, feats, narrative framing, or emotional weight. I used Sephiroth because of this. As much as FF7 is held as one of the best pieces of media ever published, I'd argue Sephiroth is just as big as Cloud, if not more. Still not as impactful as Tifa porn, but that's unbeatable. Point is that this allows certain villains to become more iconic than heroes sometimes. Arthas is still held as one of the most well-known characters in Warcraft. Even people who have never played this series have seen the cinematic, or at least have heard of his downfall. Even if he was a hero once, his embodiment as the Lich King is still his most well-known portrayal, much like Darth Vader is to Anakin. And I would bet Arthas as the Lich King represents Warcraft more than its heroes, like Thrall and Uther. And that is the power that villains can hold in a franchise. But right now, as I speak, the industry as a whole has forgotten how to make such characters altogether. For starters, how about we take the infamous Odin in Ragnarok? A character who spends most of his time lurking as crows and cosplaying as Tyr. All he has is this folksy, cunning facade, one that never shows anything darker or a serious side that makes you acknowledge him as the main villain of this saga. He isn't emotionally connected to you such as Arthas, you didn't spend time with him to see his downfall. He is not charismatic enough such as Vaas, giving out killer dialogue that leaves you at the edge of your seat. He is not built as a menace like Virgil, where his presence is sheer terror. And he sure as hell isn't built like his superior predecessor, Zeus, who you really wanted to beat the living shit out of, and whom you could do that, mind you. All we do is spend an entire first game hearing how dangerous Odin is, yet we barely see the reason why. He kills two characters on screen, one being Thor, his own son. A character that carries that terrifying aura effortlessly, something Odin never does. Worse, we never get his point of view. We're told he is this master manipulator obsessed with fate and the afterlife. But it's just shallow existentialism that pretty much every character in the series could pretty much embody. Even Kratos himself after dying 3 times. There is a serious lack of motivation to understand why he is so desperate to destroy everything. We don't know what wearing the mask means to him, therefore we have zero reason to ever sympathize, understand, or give a shit about Odin. And this gets even worse considering that Thor's loyalty to him makes no sense. The game tells us Sif was right, that Odin treated them like shit and ruined their family. Yet, Thor stays loyal until the plot suddenly needs him to turn. The justification that Thor just wanted his father love is a terrible excuse. And even worse than that is the fact that they considered sparing Odin and teach him a lesson about being better. After everything he's done. After the whole previous game ensuring to kill Baldur because some people can't be saved. What a mess of a message. Not only that, but Odin is just one-dimensional, power-hungry cosplay of a god that tries his absolute worst to pose as an intriguing mastermind. I hate to say it, but Heimdall is still a more charismatic, entertaining, and captivating villain. Even Thor was a wasted antagonist. And when it comes to payoff, Baldur was miles ahead in spectacle. A Norse character nobody even cared before 2018 and who is portrayed as a threat of the same level as the literal All-Father, taking much more effort to take down. It's insane that this is God of War, a franchise built on spectacle lacking the same thing that made it what it was. Because to not want spectacle in God of War is to not love the franchise. Last Fight felt more like beating a geriatric insane old man than overcoming a god. Even the game treats him as a comic relief at times. He is nothing more than an underwhelming antagonist in an underwhelming game. What a joke. But to give a comparison of what I consider to be a better version of the same idea, I'd argue Handsome Jack is everything Odin is not. Despite disliking Borderlands and thinking it's really cringe, it isn't possible to deny the immense cultural impact of Handsome Jack. He's not a physical force of nature, he is a charismatic bastard. Both are, on paper, puppet masters who rule through their schemes. Not the ones who you constantly fight against, but those characters who are always up to no good, liars and deceivers. But here's the distance between them. Handsome Jack is a psychopath, taking pleasure in torturing a woman, but still believing he's the hero despite that. Simply because he spared her. He's delusional and extremely self-idealistic, believing to be the one to dictate right from wrong. He insists on being the hero the world needs, blaming all what's wrong in the world toward you and everyone else but him. All that while simultaneously having a superior complex, but also being extremely self-aware of his message. Of course, he is also pathetic like Odin, but different from that one-eyed retard, he actually poses an interesting character study. Someone extremely disturbed, but also charismatic in a sense of being an asshole, mocking the death of Roland while also trying so hard to be funny and a heroic figure desperate for attention and recognition. He acts and sounds like a redditor, but he is still someone with a lot of undeniable presence. He is present in world building, he is always mocking you on the radio, and also someone who was milked on and on through sequels because of how effective he was. To the point of being a missing piece to that movie nobody watched. That's how you know what is cultural impact. A cartoonish evil guy who matches the tone and necessity of a story. An event that is nowhere to be seen anymore. Because when anything manages to break through culturally recently, it's not even real villain presence. Because the two biggest cultural impacts we got were Dimitrescu, not for being a compelling villain with depth or menace, it was because she had fat tits. The safest gooning in the internet in the form of a tall vampire mommy. All it did was to get women to cosplay her and get engagement. That's it. And the other was Malenia, an actual interesting character with a tragic warrior angle. But her massive impact was to be the new Orphan of Kos, a mere clickbait as a difficult boss everyone wanted to watch destroy streamers. This is an industry pattern, one that doesn't stop at this. Villainy itself has lost its meaning and it's being slowly stripped away by modern writers. And I'd like to mention Riot Games as my biggest enemy in that regard. Without extending myself that much, during a decade from Jinx's arrival in 2013 all the way to late 2024, she was portrayed as a manic, impulsive criminal who loved to wreak havoc with zero regard for consequences. A character designed to mimic the formula that made Harley Quinn so beloved. The crazy chick who loves to kill. However, as soon as Arcane finished, Riot updated her official description and bio on the Universe site, adding the haunted by the consequences of her past and framing her attitude from trauma, making her a more flawed, regretful figure. Why? Because they wanted people who watched the show first to not feel lost when they opened the game. They wanted everything to be aligned in lore. Same with Victor, once a cold, emotionless machine herald obsessed with pure tech supremacy and desires to replace humanity with something better, now a hex-core tragedy due to his illness. And you might even ask me, why does that matter? Why does the lore of a PvP game that people play competitive matters? Well, because that is a phenomenon that is being occurred in most games. Retconning and altered legacy is done way more often than people would like to admit. I could add one of my absolute favorites, Kafka. Another proof that not just adaptations or remakes, but also sequels and spin-offs can damage a legacy character. Once a clown who barely showed up, yet one with incredible impact due to just one sound effect. He is a complete maniac who casually kills people like they're nothing. He starts as a joke, then he poisons an entire castle, killing women and children. Then he betrays and kills his own master without any remorse. Then he destroys half the world. Why? Because he is an immense asshole. He is a villain, no need to justify it. A simple yet effective villain. But then in comes Dissidia and it adds subtle layers of tragedy. Experiments that left him unable to feel or understand love and hope. So killing is all he has left. And we're supposed to understand him more, not forgive him, but understand his villainy. Arven newest Resident Evil 9. Spencer was always one of the big bads of the franchise, now completely decayed to a somewhat regretful man in an attempt of redemption through the easiest way to find sympathy of the audience: a child. It's all so tiresome. Everywhere you look, creators are terrified of pure evil antagonists. Across all media, every villain must have a sob story, a tragic backstory, layers of grey. This constant trend only screams one thing: creative bankruptcy aligned with the terrible morals that were shoved down in media. That is, unless your so-called villain isn't a white boy in a suit or an allegory for Nazis. Then he can be unredeemable. And even then, he has a past. God, what has entertainment become? The only acknowledgement I have here is that I know some midwit will say that some fucking indie game or AA out there has a great villain that changed your life and sit among your favorites. Gilead Osborne is a really good villain I enjoyed in Trails of Cold Steel. Same could be said for Lewis in Metaphor Refantasio. Both excellent for what they have to be, but the point is, they are not culturally impactful. As much as you love them, they do not hold a candle to GLaDOS. Their relevancy is simply futile, and it's not a matter of how many games there are or what is trendy. Cultural impact trespasses taste into common knowledge. You can quite literally hate puzzle games, but you bet that if you only mildly interacted with games, you know who she is. Everyone who has heard the name Legend of Zelda knows who Ganondorf is. One of the most beloved characters in Resident Evil is Wesker, and so on. Cultural impact isn't easy, but it used to be a constant, not an exception. When was the last time we saw a guy like Virgil arrive? A frightening badass man who did heinous acts of crime, but did such while looking so cool that many consider him a better character than the protagonist. Evil's coolness was shriveled up and destroyed. There are many anchors to this problem: creativity, guts to do something different, conviction, and so on. But this cancer is one that makes me feel personally sick of playing recent games. The lack of a strong antagonistic force means that your story has no significant obstacle. That is why I am trapped looking back, seeing how good we had it back then, when just a scene convinced you that they were cool. And that is why I miss Kino villains. Thanks for watching.